You're listening to For the Republic, a love letter to Star Wars animation.
Hello there.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the beginning of our Mandalorian recaps here on For the Republic, a love letter to Star Wars animation. It is Conor, Don, and Andrew here to talk about the premiere of Season 3, Chapter 17, The Apostate. It's been 2 years since we've had Mando in our lives, well, the show itself. It's been a little over a year since the Book of Boba Fett now. But it still feels like it's been a while since we were back in this, like, Mandoverse. And, like, people have questioned, like, oh, like, how has it held up compared to, say, Obi-Wan or Andor? But there was just something about going back to, like, the truly fun, pulpy action serial side of Star Wars that I just ate up with a spoon the whole time. And I really enjoyed this episode a whole bunch overall. And there was just a bunch of little moments in this episode. Like, the overall story, I really liked, and I thought it was a strong way to start off the season. Really did a good job at showing us what's coming with this season and where they're going to be going with the whole Mandalore thing. But there was just those little things throughout the entire episode that I just ate up and loved. And I was like, you know what? I do love the Mandoverse. And I feel like I didn't do the show justice with a rewatch beforehand. And I know a lot of people were rewatching Season 1 and Season 2. And I probably should have. I was really considering it, but I haven't gone back and rewatched any of the live-action projects yet, aside from Kenobi that we've had on Disney+. And even Kenobi, I only watched about half of it before I got distracted and did other things instead of finishing the rewatch. I did rewatch Chapter 5 and Chapter 6 2 or 3 times a piece, though, so I will. Oh yeah, I will be completely upfront there.
I've watched that like at least 5 times.
Yeah,
I totally agree with you, Andrew, about like just how nice it is to just like step back into this corner of Star Wars again. Like, you know, just the second that the Ludwig Göransson theme just kicked in and the title card. And
oh my god,
it was just like, yeah, Mando's back, baby.
The minute the end credits theme hit, I was like, yes. Here we go.
Art. Yeah, and there's some interesting stuff, just like some differences with the post-credit scene, the credits that I just would be that I'm interested to like bring up. But like, I think what I really appreciate about this this premiere episode of Series 3 is that it's very familiar, but it's already clear like that there is a shift, that there has been a shift in like not just the story, but the storytelling. There's like, this is like a lot bigger than certain episodes have been before. Like, I feel like the technology is really starting to they're really starting to stretch the capabilities of what the volume can do, and there's a lot more pairing it with practical sets, like the brilliant throne room on Kalevala, and the and also like just the whole Nevarro setup was just like mwah, brilliant.
Yeah, I know it's never gonna happen, but it would be really cool if we got Nevarro as like an alternate Galaxy's Edge park.
That would be
pretty sweet. Yeah, like, because we already have Mando. I doubt it'll happen because Mando's at Galaxy's Edge now, but like it would be super cool if there was like a Nevarro at like, say, Disney World. I mean, I feel like they're kind of missing a trick, like, you know, different kind of like Galaxy's Edge type like
I was pitching
parks
on TikTok that they should do a like park version of 79's the Clone Bar from the Clone Wars, like
79's. Nice touch.
I think that would be sweet. So, so I totally like agree with you there. Again, someone showed like just a flashback of what Nevarro was like the first time we saw it in Season 1 compared to how we see it in Season 3, and it's just completely different now. Greef Karga really has things thriving there, which I can't wait to talk about our new High Magistrate, because there are certain little things, one in particular, that I loved about seeing Greef again. But Don did pitch that we just briefly go over what we thought about the first 2 seasons and I guess Chapter 5 and 6 of Book of Boba, because those were the really Din-centric episodes. Because we haven't talked really at length about Mando here on this podcast because we weren't a thing when season 1 and season 2 were airing, and then we started like right after Book of Boba Fett finished up. We started our Clone Wars coverage right around a month or so, I would say, after Book of Boba Fett season 1 wrapped, or season 1. It might be the only season, who knows? But overall, hopefully, I mean, season 2. Again, it does feel so weird that it's only been what, like 3 or 4 years since the show started, because in a way it feels like it's been around for a while. Just because, like, what the Star Wars fandom was like in a pre-Grogu capitalism world is an interesting thing to think about, because the little bugger's been around for a while now.
Yeah, I mean, exactly.
The show's awesome. I think it's a blast. Season 1 does have a lot of those like episode of the week type of stories that you know, people will get on The Bad Batch for. But I think Mando, I think, handled it a little bit better, even though there are about 2 or 3 episodes in season 1 that I'm not overly fond of. Season 2, I thought was a big step up. I know some people go the other way with that, but I personally enjoyed season 2 way more. There were a couple bumpy ones in there as well, but like the Marshal, the Heiress, the Jedi, and the Rescue are, I think, maybe the top 4 episodes of the whole show. They're just fantastic episodes. And I love the way that the show is handled, the way of people will get on Favreau and Filoni now for, you know, quote unquote cameos, even though, you know, half the time they're not cameos. But I love the way that season 1 was mainly standalone, introduced its own characters. And then once we had a full season, we started bringing in, oh, hey, here's Bo-Katan, here's Ahsoka, here's, you know, Luke at the end to like add stuff to the story. And that's what, you know, the animated shows did. That's what Rebels did. They introduced their cast in the first season, and then once season 2 started is when you started getting like Ahsoka showing up. Although I guess Lando did show up in Rebels season 1, but like those early Rebels episodes are kind of like weird, where it's like, oh, we got to help out R2-D2 and 3PO. But like once we got
feeling
into, like,
the tone out,
once we got into the main story is when they started bringing more stuff in from Clone Wars. So I think Mando did the same thing. And then the Book of Boba Fett, we can have the conversation of whether or not those Mando episodes were truly like good for the show overall, but I think we can save that for another day. Chapter 5 of that one, the one that Bryce directed, Bryce Dallas Howard, that is my one of my favorite episodes of Star Wars TV ever. I think it's fantastic. I think it's absolutely fantastic. And then chapter 6 had the really cool ending with Cobb and Cad Bane. So overall, those episodes I think were strong standalones. Whether or not they helped or hurt the narrative Book of Boba Fett, we can have that conversation another time. It is just not this show, is what I will say. But I love the story of Din. I love that he, like, there are points in this episode, even in this episode and then through the early seasons, where he's like talking about like, oh, with the scene with IG-11, it's like, oh, he's stuck in his original programming, or he's reverting back to his old ways.
He's defaulted back to his original programming.
Where that is what a line. That's what Din is kind of doing himself, because he finally has that moment of purpose at the end of season 2 where he takes his helmet off, and now he's like reverting, like, I have to go back to the way of Mandalore. I have to redeem myself. I have to go to the mines. So the story of Din and how he's evolved as a character in so many different ways, I've loved, and hats off to Pedro Pascal and all the other people that bring the character to life, because I love the show.
Quality. Well, I'm gonna like come in here and say like I kind of echo a lot of what you're saying really with season 1 and season 2, because like I was already kind of excited for The Mandalorian when it first hit, but then like when it became clear what the show was about, it did that kind of thing that Star Wars is so good at, where it does the other thing from what you're expecting. We all thought this was just going to be like a gritty, hard-bitten show about like a badass bounty hunter who's really cold and ruthless and just hunts down all these different people, and it's morally grey. Nah, literally by the end of the first episode, he finds this child, and it becomes this far more heartfelt narrative, like this lone wolf and cub style story that just like explores the theme of religious trauma, like, which is a fascinating subject for Star Wars to explore. And the fact that it's not even like the fact that the Jedi are an ancillary part of this series is incredible, because you have such an interesting idea with the different Mandalorian coverts and their different ideologies. And you know, I like that, like, the show has been able to go from carving out its own little corner in the Star Wars galaxy to then meshing so well with the rest of Star Wars canon. Like, everyone was like, oh, you know, this thing about them taking their helmets off, it doesn't mesh with other Mandalorians we've seen before. And then they addressed that, and it made perfect sense, and it furthered the themes of the story. And, you know, I'm going to also agree that, like, season 2 was a step up for me, because I felt like the guest spots from the characters like Bo-Katan, Ahsoka, also Luke, were like really well handled. You know, I know some people grouse about Luke showing up at the end, but it really hit for me personally. It's probably the rescue, I think, is the piece of Star Wars media I have cried at the most pre-Chapter 6 of Obi-Wan Kenobi.
And then, sorry to interrupt, but Cobb Van 2, like, that was the first time we saw, it was like, hey, characters from books and comics can start showing up in these shows.
Yeah, like, and nothing is being ignored there. Like, everything it was shown to be kind of relevant. The books, the movies, the shows, it all felt like it fit in the same kind of hole. And I was really impressed at season 2 for making all of that coalesce together, and for having such a really emotional finale with the separation of, like, Din and Grogu, which is just Din is a great character. Like, it would have been very easy for him to, like, fall under the shadow of other Mandalorians like Boba Fett and Bo-Katan. But, you know, because you've got, like, the incredible Pedro Pascal, fantastic actor, you know, as we're seeing in both this and The Last of Us and other shows that he's been in, he's really given the character a life of his own, like, where he feels like he can stand shoulder to shoulder with Boba and Bo-Katan and not feel like a lesser character. Even though he's been around not nearly as long as this lot, and he's you know, we've seen him go from, like, this humble bounty hunter to, like, potentially being the, like, the one who will unite the clans with the Darksaber. Whether he winds up doing that, it's an interesting position to have, like, put him in, and to have him be this, like, surrogate father to Grogu is just it's been easily the beating heart of the show. I know some people weren't fond of the fact that they reunited so quickly, but I liked the way they handled it. I feel like making it about Grogu's journey, like his choice to be with Din, rather than, like, him just being sort of passed around like a prop. I appreciated that. The reunion was emotional, and it's really nice to see them, like, united together again, because since we're probably headed into darker territory now, because we're going to be exploring, like, the trauma of what the Empire did to Mandalore, we're going to be exploring the fractious nature of the different coverts. But so yeah, that's my overall kind of, like, somewhat jumbled thoughts on the 2 seasons of Book of Boba Fett. Oh, and he has an N1 Starfighter. I keep always forget to mention the N1 Starfighter. They gave him an N1 Starfighter. Like, Chapter 5, I love, like, as much as it does kind of interrupt the structure, I just love that I just think it's a really well-made piece of Star Wars television. And, you know, the fact that they gave him an N1 Starfighter, one of my favorite, like, ships in all of Star Wars. It's just got such a beautiful design. You know, Doug Chiang, brilliant design, man. It's just, the whole episode just works, basically.
Conor?
I like Mando. It's pretty good. But, like, over the past few years, I've really noticed that, like, my cup of tea with Star Wars is the Jedi and the Force.
Yeah.
And, like, obviously Star Wars can't survive just on one thing.
No.
It just can't. It can't survive on one thing. It can't survive on one creative. There needs to be different voices in all of Star Wars for it to just grow and thrive and evolve. And I realize 2 of those words are pretty much the same, but whatever.
Yeah.
But that being said, I've enjoyed Mando for what it is. Sometimes it's a little hard to get into it, but also I think it's mainly because of the fact that, like, I just need to step away from Twitter.
I think that would do us all a lot of favors at points.
Like,
one thing I will say about this show is I think it's both overrated and underrated by the fandom at the same time, if that makes any sense.
No, it does.
I know what you're driving at, yeah.
That's like, Mando, it's the only good thing Disney's done. This is Favreau, Filoni are our saviors. So that makes me be like, oh my God, like I'm sick of this fucking show. Like I'd rather watch anything else. But then I watch it and I'm like, no, like this show is actually really good. I can't let these fucking people get to me.
Dude, that was with when I rewatched season 1, like in like August of 2020, I think it was. I just decided to rewatch it on a whim. Not on a whim. I think I was preparing for season 2. And I was like, dang. Season 1's pretty freaking solid. And I haven't done the same thing for season 2. I probably won't because just life in general has been really hectic. But I enjoy for what it is. It's obviously just it's never going to be like my top tier, like consistent Star Wars. But like there are episodes and moments within every episode that I'm like, that was cool. There's two we're going to get into that I really loved.
Yeah,
indeed.
I will agree with you there, where if hypothetically, if this was the only Star Wars we were getting right now, like in the streaming age, I would be a little upset too. And I'd be like, well, this, like, I like this show, but obviously my preferences or the stuff I really gravitate towards are missing. So I'm going to be missing that. So I'm glad that, like, the first 2 seasons we had Mando was really like the only thing we were getting.
Yeah,
now that
it was
we
the
have
anchorage point.
Our Obi-Wans, our Andors, our Bad Batches at the same time, we're getting like Ahsoka and Skeleton Crew later this year, and we're hopefully starting at Celebration going to start getting some more movies soon. It's going to help us out and really like give
Survivor.
a more and Survivor. It's going to give us more of a variety of Star Wars content. So now, with that out of the way, let's get into the Apostate. Rick Famuyiwa directed this episode. He directed, I believe, 3 or 4
He directed this
episodes.
One, and he's directing the penultimate episode and the finale.
Yeah, so he's doing 3 this season, and I think he did he do 2 in season 1 and 1 in season 2? Am I getting that wrong?
He did 2 in season 1 and 1 in season 2. Yeah, he did chapter 2. Chapter 7, I believe.
Yeah, he did the one that's
chapter 6. Yeah, he did the one with he did both of the ones with Bill Burr. So like, and then he did the one episode with he did the Believer episode, which was like should have felt probably a little minor compared to the last 2 episodes, and yet it was a really awesome episode.
The Believer was the one with Mayfeld in season 2, right? Because
Mayfeld, yeah, and the train and like.
Who did the one that Quill died in? Was that Deborah?
That was Deborah Chow, yes.
Okay, I thought that was Rick, but I got him wrong. I like how I'm just referring to them on a first name basis. Oh yeah, Deborah. Yeah, she did.
Deborah.
But we
Dave, John, buddies.
Now, real quickly, I just got to say, Apple Podcasts put out a tweet saying, which podcast would Grogu be most likely to guest on? Guys, I got some news. We have a little guest for the show tonight.
Oh, wow.
Hey.
So from The Mandalorian, Grogu is here for our audio listeners. We got the big guests here, guys. So he's migrated from over on my desk to here, and he'll stay here until I find it annoying. So we start things off, and oh, by the way, I would have died laughing if Connor's whole thing about Mando was just, yeah, I like it, it's pretty cool, and then just moved on. But we start this off, and we see like the armor and a group of Mandalorians kind of knighting this new kid into their cult.
It wasn't Din, but a part of me was just like gaslighting myself.
Oh, I was going to say, the first 3 minutes of this episode, I thought it was a flashback until the N1 came into shot. And I was like, okay, that's young Din, right? Because I was like, there's no way that there's this many Mandalorians like already.
No, because the only reason I knew it wasn't, I kind of figured it wasn't Din. It was like, this kid's too white.
Yeah, that too.
And
too white, and he sounds a bit annoying.
And it turns out that kid played the Tusken kid in Book of Boba.
Oh, that's so cool.
So that's cool.
That's
really cool. Also, if we're going to do like little trivia notes here, someone pointed out
trivia right there.
The helmet, the helmet that the armorer designs for him, it has a wider visor which matches the Boba Fett and Mandalorian like helmets for kids, which some people might say that that's a bit cynical, but I personally love it because it makes it more immersive for any kid, like putting on those kind of helmets and imagining themselves as a Mandalorian, because then they get to see that and they're like, oh yeah, no, this is actually I do feel like a Mandalorian. Yeah,
exactly.
But that whole opening was really good. Like I kind of clocked that it wasn't a flashback when I saw Paz Vizsla, because I was maybe wondering about it with the armorer, but it was a really well done scene, because, you know, Rip Fami was showing how good he is with action scenes. There was some like really cool blocking with a lot of the shots and framing as well. Like that shot of that shot where you have the Mandalorian flying away and the camera appears mounted on his helmet as he flies away is just like absolutely gorgeous. I loved it. And we're continuing the theme of like giant freaking monsters menacing people with
Jon
this, like,
Favreau loves his giant monsters.
Exactly.
He throws them in there all the time.
Like I wondered for like a split second if there was if it was the Empire attacking them, but then it was like I was very surprised when the giant like turtle alligator thing came out of the water. And
I think they call it a
crunching
turtle
on some
shark
Mandos.
or a shark turtle in the subtitle. So, but again, I love the way it was framed, where like it could have been a flashback. It could be in present time. Again, it was just the presence of all the other like Mandalorians there threw me off, because everything we'd seen in the prior 2 seasons were how their numbers have been dwindling. So as the armor found more people, as she recruited more people into the Watch, like who knows? I guess we'll find them out. I do like a lot of the different looking armor though. Part of me was like, some of them was like, it felt a little bit like just dudes in costumes, but at the same time I'm like, no, these are cool. I'm just not used to these looks yet. So but then when Din shows up,
wasn't there a story about how thank you, sorry, wasn't there a story about like them bringing in fans with like their so I think that's
season
probably
one was
the 501st.
The 501st, they didn't have enough stormtrooper costumes for the Gideon scene in, I think, chapter 7. So they brought in the 501st, who had the costumes, and brought them there, and they got to be in the episode. So
and they did the same with chapter 5 of Obi-Wan, I believe, as well. Like the siege on Jabim. I believe that happened. That they brought in the 501st Legion again.
That's
so
awesome. They keep doing that.
Yeah, it's just a really nice engagement with fans. I just it's just a non-toxic way to engage with people, which is just great. I also so they definitely, I feel like it definitely felt like they brought some fans on with like their own personal designs, which just it made every Mando feel more unique, which is nice. Like there's not a uniform look to the covert because it makes them feel a bit more scrappy and like they're just all sort of like coming from different corners, but it also
less like a cooler version of Stormtroopers. Like they have their own uniqueness,
and it reinforces the theme as well, because we're getting into the theme of like, you know, how they're, despite the iconic catchphrase being "this is the way," there is always more than one way, and that's what we're kind of getting into here.
That's what we're realizing.
Each Mandalorian look distinct, exactly, and having each Mandalorian look distinct reinforces that theme.
But I just love the way that the N1 just comes into frame, starts taking out the monster, and then you just see Din and then Grogu pop his head in through the little thing. I was like, oh, this is awesome. But then,
of course, title card.
Yeah, the title card, great title, The Apostate, just totally representing Din at this point and what he feels. And of course, the armor, just nothing. Just he's like, oh yeah, I just saved you. You're not a Mandalorian anymore. You took off your helmet. And then this is the point in the episode where they do the let's fill you in if you missed. If you either forgot or if you missed the Book of Boba Fett, let's fill you in. One thing I did find strange though is when they did their whole previously on the Mandalorian thing, they brought in some stuff from Book of Boba Fett, but not the fact that Grogu was back with Din. They just kind of ignored the fact that he left in season 2. And then like there's one line later with Greef and Din where he's just like, I thought you finished your quest. Yeah, I did. He came back. And it was just like,
Din practically looks into the camera and says that line. Yeah, he's like
he's back.
It's complicated.
So it's like, I mean, they didn't need to explain it, because really like the way that the Book of Boba Fett was marketed, like you probably you should have known that you needed to watch it if you were a fan of The Mandalorian.
They teased it right at the end of The Mandalorian.
And they pretty much stated, I think the thing too, that a lot of people are forgetting, which I don't blame it because they didn't really stress it in the marketing, was that this was Book of Boba was like Mando 1.5.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they said that at one point and they just didn't stress it, but that's not.
Kathleen Kennedy did refer to it as the next chapter in the story, really.
Yeah, and it's
it was best to look at it like a comic book miniseries that Marvel or DC often do to table set before they relaunch characters or start a new run with a different creative team.
And I can see why people maybe passed on it because they didn't think Mando was going to be in it, because Pedro Pascal and Din Djarin weren't marketed for the season until his episode. That was just kind of a surprise when they teased him at the end of, I think, chapter 4, when they played the Mando theme, and then he just shows up at the beginning of chapter 5 and kind of takes over the show for 2 weeks. So I could totally see why. And again, it's why have this big decision in not his show? But if all these shows are going to be connected and you're going to try to do the MCU interconnected universe type of thing with this Mandoverse stuff, you could probably expect big things to happen in any of these shows now, since they've set the precedent that, hey, we can have this big Mandalorian plot point solved in one of the spinoff shows. And again, you can have the question of whether or not it's a good idea. We're not here to have that conversation. We're just here to talk about the death on Twitter. It's been done to death. No, we don't want to get into it.
The only thing I am going to address from Twitter is that I feel like this show, this season, this premiere episode, it kind of exemplifies that there is kind of a reductionist argument that kind of frames this story as this series as just being the John and Dave show. It's just Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni. And I think the fact that Rick Famuyiwa was more involved now, he's a producer, and you've had these different recurring directors putting their own spins on the characters and stuff, and even that had them play characters themselves. I think it's more of it's a lot more complicated than just these two guys.
Twitter and reduction. I can't even speak today.
Reductionism.
What else is there? Yeah, Twitter and reductionism. What else? A match made in heaven, basically, or hell in this case.
Yeah, it's really, you can feel Rick Famuyiwa's influence on this, because he said he loves digging into, he loves playing with aliens, with exploring literally the little guys, the little weirdos of the galaxy. He did it with the Jawas, and we see it later on with the Anzellans. Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, you're absolutely right about the stuff with the armor. It's really interesting, and it kind of parallels Bo-Katan as well, because it's the same kind of response she had with Boba Fett at the end of season 2. Boba Fett has helped Din track down Moff Gideon. If anything, he's helping Bo-Katan as well, because he's helping bring her to Moff Gideon. And her first response on hearing his voice was to say, "You are not a Mandalorian." So there's a lot of, despite them being opposing, there's a lot of paralleling between Bo-Katan and the Armorer, and the different kind of philosophies, which we also see later on when we visit Kalevala.
Yeah, and it's a little thing, but I do love the fact that starting with this episode, Katie Sackhoff is also billed as starring, not just Pedro. And
first time that's happened.
Yeah, so I really like that, to just show that this season is just as much Bo-Katan season as it is Din's, and that's kind of brought to life by the marketing that I really loved, the dual posters that we got yesterday, where the dark saber with one half it's Din, one half it's Bo-Katan. I
Mommy,
love those.
Mother and father and their little baby
over the sword. But again, I just love the little armor. She's just not budging at all. You need to go to the mines. The mines don't exist. And he's like, "But I think they do." And then she's like, "All right, go there then, you little bitch," or something. She just is so done.
I was genuinely surprised with the fact that she was just done with it.
Mm-hmm.
She's so disinterested in trying to take back Mandalore. Obviously, I don't think that'll be the case forever. Maybe it will be. Who knows? But like, that is not what I expected at all. I thought she was going to be like, kind of, like, still like kind of in that same vein that she is now, but like still kind of also like, I kind of want to retake it. I just don't have the forces.
Yeah,
and it's just like nope.
The two characters you'd expect the most to want to do that, being Bo-Katan and being the armor, just want nothing to do with it right now. And Din is just so like we mentioned earlier, all he cares about is just making sure that the armorer accepts him again and that he's accepted back into the only thing he knows about being a Mandalorian. We saw this with Book of Boba Fett, where he just kind of, after he loses Grogu, he just kind of goes back to being a bounty hunter because it's the only thing he knows how to do. And it ends up being a little different. It ends up being a little choppy. I'm wondering if we're going to see the same thing where season 2, we kind of see Din like interact with other Mandalorians, interact with Koska Reeves and Bo-Katan, and become more of his own person, or like realize like, you know, the connection he has with Grogu. And that's really more of what it is than him just being another Mandalorian. I wonder now that he's like trying to force that back in and just like, no, I need to redeem myself. I need to go to the mines. And it's just going to be an obsession kind of thing where eventually he's going to realize, no, you know, I don't need this. If I'm a Mandalorian, if I say I'm a Mandalorian, and I don't need this cult controlling me. But she does kind of like, oh, if the mines still are there, they're going to be in Sundari, which again, Rebels and Clone Wars fan, I was like, I know where that is. So I got really excited there.
We have seen a gauntlet fighter in the trailer, like cruising over the wreckage of Sundari. So I think Bo-Katan will change her mind and follow Din to Sundari. I don't think we're seeing the next episode. I think that's going to be episode 3, just based on like where the rest of the plot of the episode takes us. But I agree with everything about Bo-Katan. I think it was the most surprising thing to me that her forces melted away. Like, I thought she would still have some loyal followers like Koska Reeves maybe, but the fact that she was deserted by people after failing to get the Darksaber, it's such an indictment of the way that Mandalorian society has clung to these outdated ideals of like, oh, you have to have a special sword to be the one to lead everyone. You should never take off your helmet, or you're not Mandalorian. You're not a Mandalorian. All these arbitrary rules that are stifling them and holding them back from flourishing. Really, even while the Empire is gone now and we have a new Republic in place, they're still all fractured and separate because they're still hanging on to this stuff. And it's just a really great just a really great exploration of like religious trauma, and to see I love the way it reflects on Din's story as well, because like you said, you know, he just cares about getting back in his clubhouse. Basically, he wants to be part of that group again, even though they don't really seem to have much love for him. It's all he knows.
Nothing to do with him.
You know, like the first time he took his helmet off, it was a scary experience for him. Like to another person, to Grogu, that was a traumatic experience because it was a severing of their connection. And then when he recommitted himself, if anything, I must follow the rules of my covert, even if I'm not a Mandalorian. If anything, he probably feels he was rewarded for that in a cosmic sense, because Grogu returned to him after that. So it's an interesting place he's in now. And also Bo-Katan, I feel like, if anything, I'm a lot less concerned about where Bo-Katan's story is going, because I think a lot of us were concerned that they might go a bit Daenerys Targaryen with her, like, you know, Game of Thrones season. Yeah, like just kind of like villainize her, make her go back to just how she was in the Clone Wars. But they've really kind of diffused any of that worry for me, because she's not so much angry that she doesn't have the Darksaber as very disillusioned by the fact that so much of her society is still clinging to these ideals, and almost kind of deflated about the fact that, well, she kind of helped bring this on. She was part of Death Watch. Death Watch wanted to go back to the old ways of Mandalore that her sister, Duchess Satine, didn't want to follow. And the result, it cost them everything. You know, their society was fractured. You know, Maul usurped the throne. There was war. The Empire took over and, like, wrecked their planet, ravaged it. as we keep hearing in the story.
I would not be surprised if in like maybe a few months or so we get like one of those Disney Plus playlists where it's like Bo-Katan episodes.
Yes, I would love that.
See that. Yeah. I can definitely see that. Something I'd also be really curious to see later in this season is more detail on like why the Watch is so like strung together by these beliefs. Why do they believe you can't take your helmet off? And if you do, you're not a Mandalorian anymore. I would be interested in getting more detail on that, how they formed, stuff like that. But I do like the parallels there where even though Bo-Katan is like, oh, no, the Watch is a cult, and these are like the more like relaxed, quote-unquote, rules, she still is strung by those beliefs of clinging to the Darksaber. And like, if I don't have the Darksaber, I'm nothing.
There's that line where she says to Din, you lead them then, wave that thing around and they'll do whatever you say. That's just like, it's such a great indictment of how like the Mandalorians are like, they're being like Din also, like we talked earlier about Din saying, oh, he defaulted to his own programming, literally spelling his arc out and being none the wiser for it. And it's the same with all of the Mandalorians. They're very insightful of other people, but they're completely clueless as to like what's going on with themselves. And hopefully this story is about it. Well, it seems very clear that this season is going even further in that direction of, you know, you need to move past these outdated ideas. You need to keep the core of what matters about it, but you can't hang on to stuff that's holding you back and keeping you from becoming a better version of yourself. Which I think segues nicely into like the IG-11 of it all.
Oh yeah, we get to Nevarro, and on the way there, oh, I got so excited because you're going in the hyperspace.
I almost forgot.
Great fucking shot of Din and Grogu in the hyperspace, but then we get the motherfucking space whales. Oh my god!
The way my jaw dropped,
I lost it.
My lungs.
That moment and the moment there was that one specific moment in the newest Bad Batch episode. Those two moments, I lost it.
It's
so beautifully shot. Like, I just love it. It's so cool. Like the PURGILL are such they're one of the coolest contributions Rebels has done in terms of like creatures overall, like the way they interact with the environment around them and the Force, and just the way it was shot with them in silhouettes, just appearing in just the way that the N1's size, the scale of it was used to just show how massive these things are. It's great because we've never seen that kind of thing done with hyperspace before. It's always been just like a corridor of light that the ships go through, you know, and it's not really, we've not seen this kind of like expanded upon, I think, recently until High Republic, with the paths and the hyperspace prospectors and all that. So it's really cool for this episode, not only to like give us this really awesome moment of like Rebels fan service that's also setting up Ahsoka, no doubt, but it's also kind of like showing us, look, there's so much more we don't understand about this galaxy. Like like look how big these things are. Look at like how much there is we don't understand about hyperspace. It's awesome. I loved it.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be like a little like, you think these are cool? Just wait till Ahsoka, because they're going to be a lot more important there. And to all the people crying on TikTok about Space Whales not being canon, you're wrong. Because this is...
You're so wrong.
The cartoons aren't canon. Well, they're in Mando now, so what do you think there? Also, I'm so glad that we weren't around for Book of Boba Fett, because then we would have had to address the... Favreau and Filoni are going to retcon the sequels by having Grogu take Yoda's saber. And I'm like, no, they're not. Why was that ever a topic of discussion? But then there was that moment in me that was like kind of terrified that it was for a bit. I'm like, they're not going to do that, right?
And just in case like anyone's concerned about them like retconning stuff further, here's like literally the Anzellans popping up, voiced again by Shirley Henderson, which was awesome. I loved that she came back to voice all of them.
Yeah. So we get to Nevarro after the cool ass PURGILL shot, which again, that's like a wallpaper or like a piece of art, or like a painting waiting to happen right there. Is that shot with the PURGILL. But we get to Nevarro,
Beautiful.
and like you said, just the theme park aesthetic that this place has now of just a new like utopia, this new trading outpost, as Greef says, independent from the New Republic, but just so much disrespect to the New Republic. Like no one gives a fuck about the New Republic at this point, because the Mandalorian has done a pretty good, again, they're ignoring the sequels. They're doing a good job at showing early on, at least, of why the New Republic was so easily overtaken by the First Order. Because, one, it doesn't have the same respect in the galaxy as the Old Republic did. Two, they're just showing, like, oh, they're there. They're like, we see them in like every time the New Republic shows up, so far in Mando, it's been in like an inconvenient nuisance type of way. And it just shows that they're not fully there yet, and they're not garnering the respect and the fact that all these remnants of the Empire are still out there. Like, they're not the big galactic government that the Galactic Republic was before the Clone Wars and before the Empire. But we get there, and we get Greef again. Just majestic outfit, and maybe my favorite part of the whole episode, the droids carrying his cape. That is so Star Wars. I love it. I was like, oh my god, that's fantastic.
When they bounced down the stairs, that was brilliant. I love that.
I was
it's
like,
just a great little
god.
detail.
Is Greef Karga my new favorite character just because he's got cape droids? I'm like, this is fantastic. And again, the set design, whether this was the volume, all the volume, or whether this was some built stuff, it looks fantastic.
Yeah,
and
they're really meshing it with like a greater scope of practical sets. Like there was so much of the Nevarro set that was clearly practical and had been like actually put there. There was a lot of puppetry as well, like
the quacky monkey lizards in the tree.
Yeah, yeah. No, like. I know that it's like it's great that they're not being put in boxes and cooked and eaten. I mean, why anyone would eat those things is just beyond me. But like, yeah, I wasn't as happy to see them in trees because I kind of don't like those things. They annoy me.
If Salacious Crumb shows up, I'll be don't like him. Don't like that guy. I do think it would have been hilarious though if in like a Book of Boba Fett he just pops up in the throne room at one point and just starts jumping on Boba.
His little hand just like climbs out of the wreckage of like the of Jabba's.
That would have been funny, but
like the Terminator. He's like,
that's always been one of the like Jabba's palace things, and I've never been a huge fan of. And I might get crucified on Twitter for saying this because I know people love Salacious B. Crumb, but he's always been like. He's been like the certain section of the prequel haters think about Jar Jar Binks for me like most of my life. He just bothers me. But
I'll just say this, the fact that you can beat him up in the Skywalker Saga video game was just like
haven't done it yet.
Best boss battle in the Skywalker Saga overall. Again,
you want to talk about like, oh, the prequel hate was never like this. I want to remind people that when Lego Complete Saga, the one from 07 came out, there was an achievement on that game for killing Jar Jar Binks a certain amount of times would get you an achievement.
I totally forgotten about that.
I did not know that. What the heck?
Because I had the guide for it when I was younger, and it had a list of all the achievements. It was like, this one, break Jar Jar Binks 50 times. And I was like, okay, easy achievement. I'll do that.
God damn it, Traveler's Tales.
Remember that that's what the state of prequel hatred was like in 2007. So I don't want to hear that ever again, that sequel hate is much bigger than prequel hate ever was, because it's just a lie. But we get there, and immediately when you get to Nevarro, you see this big statue of IG-11. And when he showed up in the previous end, I'm like, are they bringing back Taika? Like, I just wasn't expecting it. And then I'm like, okay, maybe they're just showing it because they're going to have this scene where Din's like, you remember that guy? He was your friend, IG-11. He died. But then he's like, okay, no, I need IG-11 because I need a droid I can trust if I'm going to Mandalore. I'm like, okay, I was not expecting that. Admittedly, that I was like, okay, that's a different direction they're going in. Din tries to fix him himself. It's like, oh, we got it. But then goes haywire, reverts back to his original programming.
Very Terminator with the clawing
exactly.
hand.
Yeah. And he gets killed via Greef's head bust falling on him. During that scene, I was just like, Din, you're shooting at him. You have the dark saber. Just whip that thing out and go like that.
I mean, maybe he didn't want to like mess him up any more than he already had. But yeah, you mentioned the bust. That was hilarious.
Yeah.
Like, I really like the design of that, like that protocol droid. I think that's the first time they've had that head design for a protocol droid. It was also very cool. I love
the all white one that we had in the
the guide one. Yeah, that was cool.
I like the fact that we got some protocol droids in that we didn't need to have like a shoehorned 3PO cameo in here. And it was just like different protocol droids. I loved that. But
I feel it's coming at some point. I feel like we could get a 3PO cameo in Mandalorian. We've had
R2. Do it. Like I won't be upset if it's like how it was in Kenobi, where R2 and 3PO are just chilling in the background of the scene on Alderaan, and they don't like focus on them that much. Like I would be fine with that, because when that episode came out, I didn't even know R2 was in it until I saw it on Twitter, and I had to go back and like rewatch the scene like twice before I found him again. Like 3PO, I think he's got the one line, but R2, I was like, oh, hold on, I got to go back and see this. But they bring him to. We brought it up earlier, but Greef's like, oh, I got just the people that can fix this droid for you. That was an accident.
What do you want?
I'm so excited.
I love the ANZELLANS so much, man.
ANZELLANS so much.
They're so good. They're so
everything
funny.
From this, just the little like workshop. Greef sticking his head out. Din sitting like, down, cross-legged, like, oh, you need to fix him.
Greef just like coming in, like just telling him what they're saying, even though he can hear what they're saying. Like, oh, I need to be fixed. He said it needs to. He said the memory circuit needs to be fixed. I know.
I just love the fact that there was a bunch of them, and yes, I'm upset that one of them. I mean, maybe one of them is Babu Frick. Maybe he'll show up, but like, I love, like you said, the fact that they're all voiced by Shirley Henderson, aka Moaning Myrtle, is just great that she's still voicing all of them, and I love the fact that they all have different voices and everything. Yeah. I love one of them that said, he said, my favorite Anakin Skywalker line, and just that. I just my soundboard guy. One of them was like,
Anakin was angry with you and broke the button.
Yeah, I had that bit prepared.
Oh my god.
Yeah, Poodoo made a comeback, and so did Dank Ferrick. So
it's broken.
That's how we know that we're back in the Mandoverse. Is we're getting the Star Wars swears. If we get the one from Book of Boba that I just hated, I'm gonna get mad again. Like
it's a bit much.
The Star Wars version of pot calling the kettle black.
Yeah, I just calling the stifling slimy.
Yeah, I hate it because it stops the episode dead for like 5 seconds long. Because I'm like, okay, just get through it.
It was a little bit better implemented in season 2. It served a purpose, but yeah, it was a little excessive. But I think they also had Din say scud as well.
Yeah, my favorite headcanon is that they tried sneaking like that into like one of the Andor scripts, and Tony Gilroy just said, "I'm not fucking doing this."
he just gave them a Wednesday style glare, like. I mean, that's the thing. Like we said before about like the other shows, and I loved Andor last year. I think Andor and Obi-Wan constantly jockeyed for like position number 1 in my favorite Star Wars stuff last year. But one thing that I think Mando has in spades is that kind of like pulpiness that Star Wars has also excelled at, and there wasn't a lot of room for that in Andor by necessity of the story. So like, there weren't a lot of situations for you to have the goofy aliens aside from, my boys, the absolute bad Narkinians.
There is probably the funniest definitely the funniest moment for me in all of Andor. It's Tubes.
Yeah.
That kills me, man. Yeah. That kills me so much.
Yeah, like Luthen
there's so much inside baseball to it.
Yeah. Luthen pulled a an Among Us strap there. You know, oh, it's Tubes who's sus.
It's Tubes.
No, I'm not sus.
No,
I'm
I
not
was.
sus. Why would I
I'm
be
gonna
sus?
send something in the server because that just reminded me of something.
Yeah.
I was in the med bay. But then Grogu bear hugging the Anzellan.
Yes!
Oh my God, it was
That
so
was I was
adorable.
dying.
That was hilarious.
Don't worry, he's young. He's young.
Squeezy. No squeeze, no squeeze. Bad baby.
I'm sorry, he's young. It's like that man's older than you.
And then Grogu just like reaches over again. I just thought it's like so adorable and hilarious at the same time. That's probably my favorite like comedy moment from the episode. I loved it. I just adore it.
Squeezy.
I rewatched just that moment from because I admittedly needed just a refresh of like adorable Grogu moments in my life before Mando came back. So I rewatched from the Heiress when he's playing with the frog baby, and I'm just like, ugh! And then we got that again here with the Anzellans. I'm just like,
He's
so
like,
now
"Yay,
we're gonna.
I have a buddy who's almost as big as me. Yes, I want to hug him. Like I apparently some people online thought that he was trying to eat the Anzellan, which like
I thought he was trying to kill it at first, but then I saw he was hugging him. Also, just Grogu just chilling in the magistrate chair earlier, just swiveling around with the little like red nut things. I'm like, that's my fucking guy right
we
there.
can't all pretend that that's not something we'd all do if we
That's
could use
literally
the
us. If I was like 5, I'd just be like swiveling in the chair the whole time.
You're like doing King Shark noises.
Yeah, but I like how Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni like saw those like death battle like Babu Frick versus Grogu tweets, and we're like, yeah, we're gonna do that. Like it's right, we're doing that. Sorry guys, it's happening.
Yeah, fatality. Grogu wins by bear hug.
But then we get to more just like, again, if this wasn't pulpy enough, we're like, this can only happen in Star Wars. It's like Mando sitting in a miniature workshop with a bunch of mini Anzellan creatures with a baby Yoda trying to hug them to death. We then get pirate crew, and I gotta say, when I saw pirate crew full of weakways, I was like, they're not.
I thought they were. Wait, are they weakways or Niktos?
There was a Nikto.
Okay.
Like
Yeah,
the lead
Vane.
guy was a Nikto.
Vane is
But
the
then there were a
Nikto,
bunch
yeah.
of weakways in the background, and I was
He
like,
looked great, by the way. The prosthetics on Vane looked fantastic. Yeah,
It
his
took me a
eyes were
second.
really.
but
Yeah.
I because I was like, the eyes look a little like, it took me out of it at first, but upon like looking at it more and the more it was in the episode, I was like, okay, no, I really like it because they clearly made it to where it's like, you're going to be an important character in this episode, so we got to make sure this looks great. And I think it looked really like, because the lack of the nose or the real flat nose took me out a little bit, because I don't remember how many times you've seen Niktos like that in live action, but it looked really good. But there were a couple weakways in the background. I was like, wait a minute, are we gonna? Because they were like, oh, are the leader of our crew, and I'm like, don't tell me. And then they said the other guy's name. I'm like, okay, well, no. I knew it was too good to be true. But I just love this scene where it just shows the evolution of Greef Karga, where it's like, oh, this bar or this school used to be the bar that we would all drink at. Like, I want to drink. It's like, tell whatever. What was the captain's name again?
Vane.
Yeah,
I know Vane, but like, who was his boss?
Oh, Gorian
Gorian
Shard.
Gorian Shard.
Great name for a crime boss. And
Pirates
also,
are no longer welcome on Nevarro, and I just love it.
Yeah.
And I just love Din's like, is there a problem here? And then just the way he just immediately takes them all out, except for
yeah,
Vane.
like
I'm like,
I love the way he leant against the tree. Like, this man can't wait to get involved and like put these guys in their place.
You
And
see-
like
yeah.
he only just like shoots one of them as well, because like Greef is still so on it that Din just needed to like drop one of them. And I think it's what I really liked as well, because like it shows it serves the theme of the story again, because you see Greef, he was a disgraced magistrate, as Moff Gideon refers to him at the end of season 1, but now he's a high magistrate, and he's built this community up with the people. And what's cool about that is that he's not lost his edge. Like, you see that despite all the frills and the fancy outfit, he pulls it away and there's the gun, and he's still quick on the draw. He shoots Vane's gun out of his hand. He drops 3 of Vane's buddies just single-handedly. you know, it's a really cool narrative, and it shows that, you know, he can better himself and care more without having to become like a weaker person physically. It's just it's a cool showing for Greef, and he gives him in this nice position within the thematics of the series.
Yep, I definitely agree with that. So they got to go get this memory core. So we gotta have a little bit of a stop before we go to Mandalore, because we gotta get this thing. So
I have my theories about how they're gonna do this, how they're gonna get this memory circuit, but I'll cover that later.
So we get there, and then pirates come back. It's like, you're not escaping us, and then we just get a really awesome dogfight, which I just loved.
Was I the only one who was like thinking that they should have just killed Vane rather than letting him go? Because I understood the reason, but I was still just sitting there like, just kill him. You gotta kill him.
I was fully expecting everyone.
I'm happy that they didn't kill him, just because of the fact that we got to hear Avast Mandalorian in Star Wars.
That's Mandalorian. It's great.
Like the fact that word's in Star Wars now, just incredible.
Proper pirate slang.
Another like only in Star Wars, because we get first of all, it was awesome just to see the N1 in a space battle. So cool, so cool, so cool. But then only in Star Wars, because we get introduced to the pirate captain, and it's this mix of Swamp Thing and like the Grinch and something out of Pirates of the Caribbean. He's got like trees growing on him. We get a vast Mandalorians, and then Din we think he's screwed. He just speeds up, goes right past him.
He's like, I haven't got time for this shit. I've got a droid part to find, and I need to catch up with my girl Bo-Katan.
You know what all the pirates were thinking?
Poodoo.
Yeah. Okay. I finally got a chance They were very upset. But
before I talk about the chase scene, I'm gonna revive a segment that we did in Andor, which was Who Watch, because believe it or not, there is a Doctor Who connection with Gorian Shard. So I don't know if he's physically played by the actor, but he's voiced by Nonso Anozie, I believe is the actor's name. And he's most known for playing a character in season 2 of Game of Thrones. I think Zaro is his name. He was in I think he was in Essos. He interacted with Daenerys a lot. But he also had a role in Doctor Who. I'm going to send Andrew the image right now. I believe I sent it earlier. But he actually provided the voice for... what's the character's name? Hydroflax.
Is it our funky guy from...
Yeah, hang on.
All right, I think I got the
I'm
image.
sending it now. Yeah, like so Hydroflax, the physical actor who played Hydroflax, because Hydroflax had 3 performers. The first was this British comedian Craig Davis, who played the head. There was a physical actor who played the robot body, who played one of the Narkinians in Andor, and now we have Nonso Anozie, who voiced the robotic part, and he is the voice of Gorian Shard. So we just need I just need Greg Davis to come in and complete.
If you remember this guy from the Andor recaps, he's back. If you're watching on video,
like we're 2 for 2 for Hydroflax guest spots in Star Wars. I just need Greg Davis to come in, play a Star Wars character, and then you've got the Hydroflax trilogy there. But that ends the Who Watch.
Who Watch making a triumphant return on the Mandalorian season 3. But we mentioned we focused a lot on the Bo-Katan scene earlier, so I don't think we need to touch on it much. I do love, like we said though, how jaded she feels at this point.
Yeah,
like you said, I don't think she's going to be the villain. I think there's going to be some tension at first. She might play a little bit of an antagonistic role, but I think they're going to team up eventually. If anything, I see the Armorer being the villain, quote unquote, of the season more than Bo-Katan, or even Gideon's still out there, so who knows. But I loved getting to see the planet, all the rain, the throne room looked so freaking
it's cool. So cool. I love the design of how do you say Kavala?
Yeah,
Kalevala.
Kalevala.
Din said Kalevala, so I believe that's the pronunciation.
Is this the first time we've seen it on screen, or was it also in
Clone Wars?
Yeah, I don't think we've seen it in any other media. Yeah,
because I believe this is, I think, the home planet of Clan Kryze, but it looks great, and just the shots of her on the throne, lads. I mean, come on. I mean, tell me that's not the most badass person you've ever seen.
She just blew Darth Maul out of the water when it comes to like awesome just throne posing.
Awesome throne pose. I'm like, I need a statue of that immediately so I can just put it on my desk.
Because, you can't tell me that Din didn't look at that.
Again, like, come on. Yeah. Life-changing right there.
I feel like, like Din, I feel like, you can't tell me that Din didn't just walk in, see her sat on the throne like that and be like, we could always just unite the clans together. Like, you could share custody of the Darksaber because
a little
you're kind of
awesome moment there. Exactly.
You could have it on weekends.
I wonder if they're gonna do something like that where they like find a way to both wield.
The poster has like them both on either side. I kind of feel like,
and that makes you think it's like, oh, it's going to be a fight for the Darksaber. I just don't. It might be that for an episode, but I don't think that's going to be the main theme of the season because I don't see them reverting Bo-Katan back to a villain, especially now that they've given her dual billing with Pedro Pascal. I just think.
What a glow up in terms of like your female leads to get Katie Sackhoff to come in, like this woman who has already got like this impressive like sci-fi background among fans with Battlestar Galactica, to have her come on, get to like really dig into the psychology of this character that she's been voicing for like over 10 years. It's such an awesome thing to see her get to be there. She looks great in the armor. I love that they've given her the more kind of like accurate hairstyle.
The wig looks way better this season.
Bo-Katan's
way better.
Like, honestly, Bo-Katan's story, like however it ends, I think is going to definitely be one of the most like underrated or sort of, I won't say underrated, but like flies under the radar Star Wars stories.
She's one of my all-time favorite Star Wars characters, and I really hope that they do not, like, don't kill her this season. I'm just going to say it right now.
I'll be very surprised if they do that.
Her arc might end. Just don't do it. Just don't. She's got more to do, and especially if you do lean in the villain side, don't do it, because I'll be pissed, because you revert the character back to being a villain when her whole Clone Wars story was the fact that she realized how wrong Death Watch was, and how it split her apart from her sister, and it was once she realized it was too late, because then Satine was killed by Maul. And remember, guys, there's still time for Cate Blanchett to be cast as Satine in something. There's still
you could always do a Kenobi season 2 and find a way to include that in flashbacks. I'm just saying.
But you mentioned glow up and female leads.
Yeah,
if you want to call what that was in season 1 and 2, we got the great line of like, oh, what happened to
Marshall Dune?
Yeah, Marshall Dune. It's like, oh yeah, they recruited her for some New Republic thing.
I mean, it makes sense. I was impressed with how efficient it was. Honestly,
I was expecting.
They didn't overthink it.
Crash blew up. I was expecting something really petty, if I'm being honest.
As much as we've all kind of like had a laugh at the expense of like Gina Carano's politics and like her absence from the Mandalorian. As much as we've had all that fun, I'm glad that they took the hype. Yeah, no, exactly. I think we've all. I think
we're all blocked.
I think I've just like that. I can't remember the name I've just said, but yeah,
I've definitely been blocked.
They handled that very. They handled it in a very mature sense. They did it in a way that felt authentic to the character, and they basically handled it within 5 seconds. So they didn't overthink it, and then that's
we got
really good.
Some more background on what happened with Gideon for those that didn't catch it in Book of Boba Fett, because I completely forgot.
He's
Conor brought that up.
Broken out, yeah.
Oh, he's 100% getting broken out. We know Conor Shakidi is on Coruscant or Hazian Prime or wherever they are right now. So we know he's going to help break Gideon out. But for those that missed the line in Boba Fett, because I apparently did, because I didn't remember it, they bring up that what was the wording the New Republic like
tribunal.
So he's locked up there.
He's probably on Coruscant, I would assume, unless of course they're.
Well, we have the Coruscant-looking planet in the trailer, which
I think is. I think it is definitely.
I think Coruscant. It is, but there's like that slim chance it's Hosnian Prime.
There's probably going to be a line about Hosnian Prime that they're moving the New Republic as a whole, as a system, to Hosnian Prime, but it's probably, I imagine, I mean, this is just a quick theory, maybe he's being transferred to Hosnian Prime from Coruscant, and the Imperial Remnant, you know, like acts then and breaks him out because he's got valuable information.
You know what would be cool? You know what would be really cool? If we want to talk about more tidbits and adding a bit more of the New Republic politics to the show, you know who's Chancellor of the New Republic at this point?
Mon frickin' Mothma.
Genevieve.
I wouldn't mind seeing her show up. That would be really kind of cool. It would be a nice kind of like thing. We've seen her under such pressure and seen her so like under such emotional pressure and like just in. Oh yeah, that's perfect, Connor. Yeah. For anyone who is just listening and no video, Connor now goes by the tagline Dr. Pershing, as he should.
I'm not even kidding you. There was some interview that he did that I saw, and like it still genuinely scares me how much he and I look alike. It really does.
I want to do like, if there's ever a chance we're like
we should get him on here.
Yeah. If
like,
anyone ever gets that, just you can do like the mirror, like the.
We just gotta do a side by side, man.
Yeah. Like maybe have start it off with like him in the place that you're usually in, and then you pop in, and we're like, wait, which one's the real Connor?
Yeah, it's like, oh,
Palpatine. This is getting out of hand. Now there's two of them.
Now there's two of them. Palpatine did Dr. Pershing a favor, and he let Dr. Pershing borrow his cloning stuff, so we could get a clone of Dr. Pershing. Okay. Yeah. So jokes aside, I thought it was a really strong start to the season. I'm excited to see where this goes. Get our little see how we get this memory core. Don, if you just want to share your where you think it's going before we wrap things up, and then we can get on out of here.
So like the theory I kind of am pursuing now, because I feel like episode 2, apparently episode 2 is really good, because they screened that at the premiere, and critics have raved about the second episode. But I'd be surprised if we go to Mandalore in the second episode, because I feel like the second one is going to be resolving
episode 3 at the earliest.
Yeah, I think that's going to resolve the process of fixing IG. So we're probably going to see that droid bar. But here's the thing: he said about the memory circuit, and the fact that they don't make them anymore. Do you know what other droid is like also is an IG unit and is very famous among Star Wars fans? IG-88. There's 5 of those things. And they're very lethal, obviously. Like they're even more dangerous than IG-11, apparently. But there's one person who is known for having taken those droids apart, and that's Boba Fett. So I feel like, the episode 2, we're probably going to go to Tatooine. You know, Din is going to check in with Amy Sedaris, with Pelimoto, get R5 installed on his ship, as we've seen in the trailers.
You got to have your Pelimoto.
Hey, Mando!
Gotta have her show up.
And then he is also gonna check in with Boba Fett and ask where he can find IG-88, which is probably gonna be like the big fight of the next episode. He has to take one of those droids down, get the circuit. Maybe Boba comes along with him for that episode to help him take down IG-88, because I feel like Jon Favreau is the kind of Star Wars fan who would love to finally put that scene that we all know was supposed to be an Empire, finally put a sort of a version of that scene on screen and have Boba Fett and Din fight an IG-88 droid.
Anything to hear Tamura Morrison pronounce Tatooine again. That's
Tatooine.
That's all I need in my life.
Hey, Din, I know where an IG unit is. Do you want to go and fight it together?
Please, I need.
Just drop it in an incinerator.
I mean, he's showing up. I think we all know him and Fennec are showing up.
Yeah,
but yeah, I'm excited. So, Mando Season 3 off to a strong start. Thank you guys for joining us on the beginnings of our Mandalorian Season 3 recaps. If you missed it, we have announced our scheduling slate for the next couple weeks as we deal with 2 shows going on at once because we are also going to still be continuing with our Bad Batch recaps. So Bad Batch recaps, we're going to be recording most weeks, unless things change. We're going to
Clone
be doing
Wars.
And Clone
we haven't
Wars.
forgotten.
Yeah, we have not forgotten, but we normally where we normally would be recording our Bad Batch recaps on Thursdays and then uploading them on Friday. That's going to be the case with Mandalorian now instead. We're going to give it the priority first. So I dropped this on Twitter and Instagram. So Fridays at noon, we're going to drop our Mando episodes. Saturdays, most weeks, will be Bad Batch. And then bi-weekly, every other week, is what we're aiming for. But God, who knows at this point. Tuesday, Wednesday, Monday, early portion of the week, we'll be dropping our Clone Wars installments for our main show. That little asterisk at the bottom says always subject to change. That's very important because there are weeks that we definitely will not be following the schedule. But again, just to recap, Fridays we'll be recording these on Thursdays, uploading them on Fridays will be Mando. Saturday will be Bad Batch. So don't be confused if you see Mandalorian recap go up when Bad Batch normally would. We're just going to be doing Mandos on Fridays, Bad Batch on Saturdays. We would be getting them to you earlier, but scheduling is tight for a lot of us. So this is what's going to be the best for our schedules. So yeah, we got some stuff coming up soon that we're excited about. As for these this week, where can everyone find you guys?
Right, you can find me on Twitter at Donovan Mead, where I tweet a lot about Star Wars, also some Marvel, DC stuff, yeah, occasionally politics as well. You can also find me on TikTok at Donovan McComish, same handle I use for Hive. I've taken a break from doing TikToks. I'm planning to do some more of that. Instagram, you can find me at Donovan_McComish. And like Conor and Andrew, you can also find me on sweditor.ig.com. I write articles along with these other guys. My most recent article was some speculation about what they could do with Obi-Wan Kenobi Season 2. And also, like Conor and Andrew, I am part of SW Editor Fiction. It is a series of short stories, webcomics, and also web animation where we tell our own sort of stories. Potentially, I should add that asterisk. Yeah, we'll see. But it's a collection of fan stories that try to stay within the confines of what's canon, though we do also appropriate some elements from the Star Wars Legends timeline for the purposes of our stories. I've written one story that released last year in June. It was called Scars of War. It stars a clone trooper and a Jedi that have both survived the Clone Wars and Order 66, and they've got a bit of trauma to deal with. If you like Star Wars and pain, definitely check it out.
Yeah, everything he just said. Conor, how about you?
You can find me on Twitter at DepaBanana. Same username as Hive. I talk Star Wars and sometimes Philly sports when they're going on. Where else? I co-host another podcast. I have like all the links for like what I'm a part of, like right in front of me on my phone. I still forget. I co-host over at the Nerd Academy podcast with a guest we've had on here for the Republic, Jared the Dark Jedi. You can find us over on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever. I also am a question writer and co-host for Star Wars in a Galaxy Epic Confrontations, Star Wars fan trivia league I'm a part of, that Don's also a part of. It's really fun getting to write questions. I'm very evil when it comes to it, and I like it because it's fun. You can find our latest episodes over at the Star Wars in a Galaxy podcast YouTube channel. Our latest episode was Jared the Dark Jedi versus Bill Sheehy. It wasn't without a bit of controversy.
Oh, did that drop? I
didn't
realize that dropped.
Yeah, no, it dropped on. Today is Thursday. I think it dropped on Tuesday. And then like Don and potentially Andrew, SW editor, IG.com/fiction. I work with these guys on that stuff. I don't have any stories published yet. I do have some in the works. One that is coming out in like this month, I think. It's called The Knight's Welcome. It stars everyone's favorite ginger Jedi, Cal Kestis. Not everyone, but like that's a generalization. But you knew that.
All right, Jade.
And it is set. Actually, you know what? I don't even know when it's going to be set because I've heard some stuff about battle scars that might make me set it after. Who knows? We'll figure that out.
Get us those art copies, Lucas.
But yeah, a faithful. Yeah, it's short. I'm rambling. Andrew, where can they find you?
As for myself, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all the like at Starlight Andrew. Connor mentioned Jared earlier. We have something coming up on this podcast feed very soon. Little special collab. So stay tuned to that. We were supposed to record it last weekend. It didn't get to that, so we'll record it again fairly soon. As for the podcast itself, you can find us on Twitter at For the Repub Pod and on Instagram and TikTok at For the Republic Pod. Stay tuned to our socials for when updates on the show are dropping. There's going to be a lot soon, so make sure you stay tuned to our social media feeds. And then our YouTube channel, For the Republic Podcast, subscribe there. We're close to 50 subs, which means we're halfway there to our 100 sub goal. Get us there, because then we can start doing live streams and all that fun stuff, and it'll really help us out if you help us get there, because a lot of what we have planned hedges on getting to that goal for this year. So it would just make us the happiest people in the world, and it would be a great way to support us. Also, leave us reviews on the Google App Store and the Apple App Store, because those help us out a lot as well for just getting more eyes on the podcast. Our Clone Wars coverage, we will be back hopefully next week with our Ryloth arc to finish off Season 1 and the first quote-unquote season of the For the Republic main show. And then tomorrow we'll be recording Bad Batch. That'll probably just be Don and I, but who knows? And that will drop on Saturday, because it'll be Friday when you're listening to this now. So thank you for joining us for the beginning of our Mandalorian coverage. We'll see you back here next week. And as always, this is the way.
This is the way.